Testing 1, 2, 3. Warning, the following video may contain adult language and themes. Your discretion is strongly advised. If you have a problem with this, stop playing this video now. Okay, I just got done watching a movie that I admit I've seen before, but I just wanted to watch it again just to remember how bad it is. I hadn't seen it in a while and was like, well, maybe I was really biased at the time and maybe I should watch it again. But no, it's just as bad. It's called Twin Peaks. Yes, that Twin Peaks. Fire Walk with Me. Released in 1992, rated R. It's 135 minutes, which is around 2 hours and 15 minutes. It's a mystery thriller, and it has a 7.2 on Internet Movie Database, which is really good. Way better than this deserves. It was directed by David Lynch. It's based off of the TV series, which you probably already know. But this is a terrible movie, in my opinion. Terrible. It bombed at the box office. I think it only cost like 10 million to make. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it cost only 10 million to make, and only made like 4 to 7 million. I can't remember in America. I don't know what it made overseas, but that's pretty bad. And it was met with pretty harsh criticism. I think it was. The Internet Movie Database rating's pretty high though, so I'll have to look at the critics' ratings. But that's beside the point. I didn't like it. This is a terrible fucking movie. I'd just forgotten how terrible this movie is. Just for starters, I loved the TV show. I'm a big fan of the TV show. I really liked it. How I would describe the TV show for those of you who don't know, it's basically a soap opera, but one that men would probably be comfortable admitting they like. It was a soap opera, but it also had mystery. It was quirky. It was directed by David Lynch, for Christ's sake, okay? So you didn't feel embarrassed watching it, but it was sort of like a soap opera. It survived 2 seasons. I think the first season was like 10 episodes, and I think the second was like 20. Again, I may be wrong, but it didn't survive for very long. And the second season ended on a huge cliffhanger. It was quirky. It was funny at times. It had a little bit of science fiction. It had a little bit of spirituality and the supernatural. It was dark at times. It did have some romance, and it was kind of depressing. It was sort of a murder mystery. It starred a lot of semi-famous people, and it was basically about this small town called Twin Peaks. For those of you who don't know, I'll give you the plot summary of the show, because that's really important, because this is basically a follow-up to the show, this movie. It took place in a small town called Twin Peaks. I don't even know where the town is, but anyway. And this body washes ashore, and it's this high school girl named Laura Palmer, and the FBI has to come in and investigate, and it sort of like opens up the town of Twin Peaks, which is this seemingly small, peaceful town in, like, I think it's the Northwest, and in the mountains where there's all these trees, and it's very, very lumber based economy, and it opens up the towns, and everybody has a secret in the town, and it's this sort of soap opera-ish where it's the mystery, who killed Laura Palmer. It runs through I think it ran through the entire first season, and they finally find out who killed Laura Palmer at the end of the first season. The first season is really good. The first 10 episodes are really fucking good. I really like them, mainly because David Lynch was directing. I think David Lynch left like at the end of the first season, and the second season just sucked up until the end when David Lynch came back, and it got good again. Yeah, so basically that was a whole. Agent Dale Cooper with the FBI comes down to investigate in the town of Twin Peaks, and it's a very quirky show. It was quirky. It was dark. It had all. It was a soap opera. That's the best way I can describe it. It was a soap opera that you didn't feel ashamed to watch, because it kind of catered to the men too. Because David Lynch, is pretty. He caters to both sides, I think. It was a really good show. It was just really good. I don't know how better to put it. I can't give you the whole synopsis because it was a long. I can't. Anyway, this movie sucks. People were disappointed, I think, that there was no third season. They wanted a follow up, so David Lynch made a follow up. The biggest problem I think with this show this movie, is that it's just that. It's an independent movie, and there is no studio, network studio involvement to tone it down, tone down the artsiness. Because if you know anything about David Lynch, you know he's very artsy, almost too artsy at times. And this is no more apparent than in this movie. This movie is way too artsy. The Twin Peaks TV series was kind of artsy, but you could tell that it had studio influence. You know, they were like, you could tell that there were people like saying, David Lynch, could you kind of dial it back a little? You know, this has to be made for TV. You can't be so ambiguous. You can't have all these like weird shit going on that we don't understand. You know, you kind of need to be a little bit more clear. You know, I think that's what made the show so good, is because it kind of toned down David Lynch. The problem is, with this movie, I think that studio influence is not present. So David Lynch is his, you know, usual confusing, just dark, weird self. That's what's wrong with this movie, and this movie is paced so slowly. It doesn't feel like it's a Twin Peaks episode either. Which is I which is a shame, because that's what I think people wanted. They wanted more Twin Peaks episodes. They didn't want a David Lynch, you know, art house film based on Twin Peaks, which is what this is. It's so slow. It's so weird. There are things in this movie that just don't make sense as to why they're there. Another good way, accurate way I could describe what this movie's like, it's like Inland Empire. If you've seen Inland Empire, it's a little bit less confusing than Inland Empire, but it's kind of around that ballpark. I hated Inland Empire. That's like, in my opinion, one of the worst David Lynch movies ever. My favorite David Lynch movie on this subject is probably Lost Highway, but that's another video. Anyway, basically this movie chronicles like the last 7 days of Laura Palmer's life. You know, the teenage girl who washed up on shore, and that's the whole mystery of the TV series. Who killed Laura Palmer? And surprisingly, almost all the original cast is back. They were available. They probably didn't have anything better going on, because I don't think any of them have become that famous. I think Lara Flynn Boyle, the actress who played the friend of Laura Palmer, you know, high school friend, since they're in high school, she didn't return, so they got a different actress to play her, which I didn't have a problem with. I think they got pretty much everybody else back. Some of the casts I'll list off: Cheryl Lee, who's Laura Palmer; Ray Wise, who's Laura Palmer's dad. Spoiler, he's the one who killed Laura Palmer. Madchen Amick, who's Shelley Johnson, who I think Madchen Amick is just breathtaking when she was younger. Dana Ashbrook as Bobby Briggs, who's like a sort of who was sort of a love of Laura Palmer, and he's sort of this cocky drug dealer. Phoebe Augustin, David Bowie is in this movie. Eric DeRay, Miguel Ferrer, a lot of people, a lot of famous people, and David Lynch even put himself in this movie. But that's what would I give this out of 10? Man, I feel like giving this just like a 4.5. 4.5, you know, because this is just a terrible movie. Like, basically what happens in this movie, we find out that Laura Palmer's dad, it turns out Laura Palmer's dad killed her, and you find that out in the TV series. Sorry if I'm spoiling stuff, but it turns out that he was killed a girl before this, and I guess the whole deal is with the show is that he gets possessed or something by a spirit, and that's what makes him kill people. And so it turns out he killed another girl before this, and like they send FBI guys down to look at that too, and one of the FBI guys goes missing, and then yeah, I think it chronicles, it shows Laura Palmer and what kind of her life was like, and how she was kind of sexually abused, I think, by her father. I mean, it's so unclear. I mean, that's how David Lynch tells the story. He doesn't really tell you outright. He sort of just hints at it, that she was sexually abused by her father, and that's why she got into drugs and had all this whole secret life outside of her seemingly perfect life, and that's what led to her doing drugs and everything. And then eventually her dad like follows her to this like orgy, and he's really mad at her. I think he's possessed by the spirit or something named Bob, and he kills her. And like, this movie like is so pretentious. I think Quentin Tarantino said it best. I don't like a lot of Quentin Tarantino's movies. I like a few, but he said something along the lines of that this movie, David Lynch goes so far up his own ass in this movie, like which I agree with wholeheartedly. And Tarantino says he loved David Lynch before this, but this movie just broke the camel's back. And I agree, this movie is just ridiculous. Like, it's slow too. There's a lot of just like unneeded like scenes. You're like, come on, can we move on to the next scene? Can we move on? There's just like a lot of dead screen time where people are just doing like like are just sitting there, and you're like, can we cut? Can we get on to the next scene? And just a lot of nonsensical bullshit, like a lot of symbolism, a lot of metaphors, and I don't even think David Lynch knows what some of the stuff in this movie meant. Real big disappointment. There are times when this movie's trying to be creepy and scary, and it's just not. For instance, when Laura Palmer's dad is killing her, he like kidnaps her and this other girl who was in the orgy, and he has them tied up, and he's like running behind them with like the rope, and he has them tied up, and they're running away from him, and he's like behind them going ha ha ha, and screaming and like grinning menacingly, and it's supposed to be like scary, I think, but it's pathetic, it's sad, it's just not scary at all. It's kind of silly. In fact, this movie was just silly. It's just, oh my god, some of the shit in this movie, like especially a lot of stuff that has to do with like Black Lodge and White Lodge, which is in the TV series, that's like sort of where the spirits come from, where they possess people. And it's just like weird stuff. Like they talk really weird, like you must. There's like the midget. There's like this midget spirit who lives in White Lodge, and it didn't seem so silly in the TV series. It was done so it didn't seem so silly, but in this movie it just seems silly. It seems stupid. It seems very like pretentious. Oh, I don't know how else to put it. So I probably do a 4.5 out of 10. I don't know what they were thinking. David Lynch needs to be restrained in some of his ventures, or else it's ridiculous. Like I think that's why the Twin Peaks series was so good, is because he had people over his shoulder, like producers, saying, "Could you tone it down, David Lynch? You know, the audience isn't going to get that. You know, could you move it on a little? Could you move along a little faster? You know, we have to do this in 30 minutes. You know." So that's basically my review. If you're a Twin Peaks fanatic, you've probably already seen this, and you probably already know what I'm talking about. But anyway, I just wanted to vent because I really liked the TV series and was really disappointed by this movie. FYI, though, I think on the Blu-ray there came like deleted scenes, a lot of deleted scenes that weren't used in this movie. I think it's like 90 minutes of deleted and extended scenes. And if they had incorporated some of the scenes, it would have helped this movie a little. It would have lightened the mood. Because like I said, this movie is way too dark. It's way too artsy. It's way too slow. That's basically how I would describe the problems with this movie. And some of the deleted scenes, you know, kind of lifted the mood a little. But yeah, they're still too slowly paced and just ugh. But check it out. I would check it out if you're a fan of Twin Peaks, but you're going to be disappointed. Okay, but as far as completists go and hardcore fans of the series, you got to check this out anyway. 4.5 out of 10. Take it easy, people. Bye.